Well, howdy. How you doing? The Federal Reserve has spent the last few years keeping interest rates very low to grow the economy. It's a miracle. But not everyone thinks it's working, because it's not. Forbes columnist Tamny has written a new book called Who Needs the Fed? What Taylor Swift, Uber, and robots tell us about money, credit, and why we should abolish America's central bank. He joins me now to slaughter the sacred cows of the Federal Reserve System. Hi, Tamny.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Love the book. I have been reading it. You make such great illustrations for, lay people and economists alike to read and enjoy. So let's talk about some of the ways that credit is used and misused in this country. You had a great story about your wife and her friends leaving a Taylor Swift concert, hours-long line at the Metro in D.C. Cabs wouldn't go pick people up, but they used Uber. How is Uber similar to the Fed? Or what can the Fed learn from Uber, rather?
The Fed could learn everything from Uber. In fact, this little app mocks the 20,000 economists in the Fed's employ. Because what does Uber do to please its customers? It pleases its drivers first.
Yeah.
When drivers are most in need, when there's traffic, when no one's around, surge pricing comes into play, luring them to where they need to be so that customers can be served.
So they're not forced, they're not coerced to go work. And that's one of the great points you make in the book, is a lot of times you hear about the buyers and the Fed, perhaps keeping interest rates low for the buyers. But what about the sellers?
Exactly.
I mean, they're just as critical in a market economy.
If you love borrowing, if you love easy credit, you must love saving, and that's what the Fed misses. It decrees zero rates and basically says to the savers, necessary for people to borrow, you don't matter.
Yeah.
Uber, on the other hand, makes credit plentiful precisely because it says the drivers matter every bit as much to this transaction. Uber reveals the Fed's models as backwards.
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about Hollywood versus Silicon Valley. Because in Hollywood, you talk about Brian Grazer's career as a producer partnering with Ron Howard and the string of hits that he has. And here's a guy who says he hears no rather 90% of the time. And credit in Hollywood is a critical thing as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the good news. The Fed's over here decreeing easy credit, but the real economy mocks the Fed every single day.
Yeah.
Grazer's one of the most talented producers in the history of Hollywood. As he says, I'm rejected for my projects 90% of the time.
And in Silicon Valley, the contrast is most people actually profit off their failures. I mean, they tell stories about these massive failures, and they somehow advance because credit is very different there.
Your failure is your credit in Silicon Valley. It shows that you have learned things from past mistakes.
Yeah.
And so the credit door is not closed to you. But interesting, even there, if you want to fund an idea in Silicon Valley, you'll give up a lot of the business to a venture capitalist. You'll give up stock options. Credit's very expensive, and that's healthy. That means that it's used wisely.
Okay. Now, you talk about the Fed, but you also say, I mean, it's easy to target them. They are an easy demon. But is some of that animosity misplaced?
Of course it is. So much of what we talk about the Fed and what it can do is just outrageous. It can't do it. It's argued that the Fed has devalued the dollar 93% since it began. In fact, if you look throughout history, the two major devaluations of the dollar, 1933 and then 1971, those were presidential decisions. The Fed, people at the top of the Fed begged them not to do that, and they were essentially overruled. The Fed is disliked, but often for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, and you also talk about who sets the exchange rate. It's not the Fed.
It's the U.S.
It's the Treasury. Yeah.
Presidents get the dollar they want. The Fed is far less relevant than people think.
All right, but we should still end it.
Yes.
Who Needs the Fed? It's such a great book. Read it now. Tamny, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Great to see you.
Yes, likewise.